Before I call bullshit on my coworker, I'm wondering if any of my UK friends could chime in and tell me if this chick is just crazy, or if she's telling the truth. Tara, my coworker, moved to Tampa from York, England last year. On Saturday, we have an office party and she flirtatiously requests for a ride home. We both live in the same town just outside of the metropolitan area. I'm a lesbian. She might be. I don't know. But I decide to see where things go and test my feelers. We're driving and she unbuckles her seatbelt, turning her body, and puts her feet in my lap as I'm driving. She's pretty short, so her maneuver is less life-threatening and more of a positive sign that my intuitions were correct. She's facing me to talk. As she's asking about my childhood and other questions to fill the time, I place my right hand on her left foot, and as my fingers rub across her skin, I feel a small circular scar on the back of her ankle, about the size of a $50, with impressions like a tiny buzzsaw was rolled around her ankle. I ask how she got the scar, and she tells me when she was a little girl in York, she'd ride her bike to get around her small suburban town. One day, a few meters from leaving her house, she came upon a trail that looked to have been recently cut. Instead of riding her bike around this large wooded park that separated her from the town, this trail, she thought, looked like it led right through. The tree park was only about a football field size, but having to ride your bike all the way around always made it seem bigger. Seeing this freshly cut path was an exciting discovery she was eager to explore. The tree canopies above gave the trail shade and provided a nice escape from the summer sun. Riding her bike along the dirt path, she noticed a big, hollowed tree. Inside the large knot of this tree, Tara says she saw 2 fairies fluttering in and out. She said that they were as tall as a can of fizzy drink. For my North American friends, fizzy drink is a soda pop. Well, she stopped her bike and watched these 2 fairies flying back and forth from the tree, returning sticks and nuts to the hollowed knot. Tara says that she stood there for a good 10 minutes, mesmerized by their sparkling wings and little human-like bodies fluttering around. On one of the trips these fairies made, little Tara noticed it struggling with a big, leafy branch. The fairy's wings flapped and flapped, trying to pull this large branch up, eventually collapsing in the grass next to the tree from exhaustion. The branch was giant compared to the fairy, but a twig for Tara's size. Seeing this tired little creature compelled her to get off of her bike and help. She says that she walked over and picked up the branch, and the other fairy appeared from behind the tree, a few inches from her face. Its face wasn't like storybooks portray, though. Absent of beauty was this creature. Its features more resembled a troll, and its clothes were not elegant. Primitive garments, only worn to protect its skin from the natural surroundings. The fairy didn't speak, but Tara knew by its glare and almost telepathic energy that she'd fucked up. She set the branch down and started to walk back towards her bike. The fairy lets her get 3 or 4 steps before its wings start fluttering and it begins to chase Tara. She turns and runs the last couple of feet towards her bike. But as she's jumping on and about to slide her kickstand up, she feels a searing hot pain in the back of her ankle. Looking down, Tara's horrified to see that the fae has bitten her and is still attached to her leg by its nasty little razor-sharp teeth, each one sinking deeper as she tried to kick it off. Eventually, one desperate swing of her leg launches the fairy off her ankle, giving Tara a chance to pedal away. She rode her bike back home in agony, and the bite became infected. Her mother thought that she'd scraped herself on something, but her grandmother was the only one that believed her story. To add to her outlandish claim, she concludes her story by saying when her and her dad went out to see where it happened, The trail was gone. It was back to a regular tree park that it had always been. What do you think? I don't know if I'm on her mom's side or her grandma's. Is there any validity to her story? Or is this a red flag that I may not want to pursue? So I've got a lot of vivid memories as a child. Most of them are places I went that I won't forget. Disney World is one of those places. Also, my parents took me and my little brother to the landmark Forest Adventure Park when I was about 7 or 8. That one's in Scotland, which is where my family split their time until I was about in the 3rd grade, and that's when we moved to Long Island permanently. Just before our last visit to Scotland, at least the last one which I was a child, I have another vivid memory. This one's not as tangible as a theme park, though. It's a bit fantastic. But I'd still seen it with my own eyes, and I still remember it. My father had been busy getting things in order for the big trip, so my mother took me and my little brother to the beach near our temporary home. The area was incredibly beautiful, and Mother even told us that we might see dolphins out there. To get to the beach, it was a small hike. You couldn't just drive your car down there. It may sound odd, but my mother allowed me to run ahead of her and my little brother for a bit. But I grew up next to the ocean, and we spent a great deal of time outside with both my mother and father. My younger brother stayed behind and walked with my mother as I ran ahead. I was picking up rocks, looking at every tree, and I was already eyeing the ground for any lost seashells. I was the first one to hit the shore. I knew I could run up to it and even go in for a bit if I wanted to, as long as I could still touch the bottom and my mother could see me go in. I opted to stay out of the water, and I was combing the shore for seashells. I saw this stack of rocks that was calling my name. I yelled to my mom that I wanted to check out the cluster of rocks further down the beach. She waved me on, and so I went. As I reached the rocks, I climbed over a few smaller ones to get a good viewpoint from the larger one. I was surprised when I reached the place to climb to the larger rock, and I saw a boy. He was probably my younger brother's age because he was just so small, but he didn't look like anyone I'd ever seen in my life. Being a friendly child, I asked the boy what he was doing over here. Had he found any seashells? The boy didn't speak. He smiled, and then suddenly he brandished a few seashells before handing them to me. Surprised, I held out my small carrier I'd brought to hold shells, a small tin lunchbox. As he placed them in the tin, I couldn't help but notice how pale his skin was. Truly, his skin was more blue, almost matching the color of the water itself. His hair looked to be made of something slimy and green. Possibly it was just seaweed stuck in his hair. I couldn't be sure. It was so strange. I still can't be sure. I thanked the boy, and he still said nothing. As I looked into his eyes, I couldn't help but notice that they were rather dark. Just black circles, really, as if he only had pupils. I started to feel a little bit uneasy about what I was seeing, but I knew it wasn't kind to react to the way people look, so I thanked the boy again, and just as I was going to hop down, he jumped into the water. He seemed to be down there for a long time, so long I almost left to grab help, but he surfaced. He climbed the rocks with some sort of ease that I didn't even know was possible. He handed me 3 more shells. He stared into my eyes, but he said nothing. I was uneasy again. I started to thank the boy again and again, but I couldn't stay. I couldn't watch him do that again. It didn't feel like I should stay. I hopped down from the rocks, and it wasn't until I was walking away that the boy said something. But the voice wasn't what I expected. and he wasn't speaking English. I stopped and turned around. I looked up, and there was what looked like the tail end of a seal, and then that disappeared into the water. I could hear a splash. Curious, I started to head back over to the rocks, but my mother called for me, telling me it was time to meet my father. As I was walking back, I told my mother about the blue boy by the rocks and the seal. She told me that she had watched me the whole time. She hadn't seen a boy or a seal. I insisted there was, even asking her to go look, but she dismissed this, saying we needed to meet my father. Sure, I had an active imagination as a kid, what kid doesn't, but I know the difference between the things I invented and the things that, honestly, my mind couldn't even begin to invent at that age. I don't know. I've always been a bit into mythology, but I don't think that even started until after this experience, when I'd casually searched for answers throughout my life. I've read about certain fae that exist close to water, especially in areas of Scotland and all throughout the UK. Selkies. I don't know a lot about them, but I know that others have claimed to see the creatures as well. People describe them in different ways. Many say that they have a sort of naughty nature, meaning they like the idea of luring humans to their death. Others say that they're simply creatures who can take on the form of a seal and a human, and that they typically only show themselves to children. I suppose it could have been just a strange-looking boy, but he was awfully good at swimming and climbing. And that hair, I can't forget how strange his hair was. To this day, my mother claims I was seeing things, but what's so silly about that is I had never just seen anything before. So, what do you think? Did I encounter a Selkie?